this conference is actually geared towards finding out or figuring out the future of science in this country. There are certain very pertinent issues on which the science-loving people as well as the practicing scientists have to discuss, come to some conclusion, and act accordingly. And it is these that we are going to discuss in different sessions of this conference. So it is a very serious conference, and I would request all participants to exhibit that seriousness in their conduct in the conference. I'll now request Professor Dhruva Mukhopadhyay to invite the inaugurator.
As Professor Banerjee has already remarked, this is a conference of a unique kind. It is not in any particular discipline of science, but it seeks to probe into the very essence of science, the heart of science. So this is a unique conference, and this will be inaugurated by the Vice Chancellor of this university, Jadavpur University, historian, Professor Suranjan Das. So I request our volunteers to put this honorific badge to Professor Das. Das to inaugurate this seminar.
Respected Professor Mukherjee, who had been a teacher of mine during my days in Presidency College, and later he was also my distinguished colleague at Calcutta University. Professor Banerjee, distinguished scientists present here today, and of course, my very dear students. Could I first say a very big thank you to the organizers of this conference for enabling me to be here. Let me, however, at the outset submit that I'm not fortunate to belong to the privileged scientific community. I come from a poor social science background where we basically scrap the barrel for our very existence. Yet, I agreed to be a part of this program because I feel we need to develop a dynamic and constructive relationship between science and society. And to ensure this dynamic and constructive relationship between science and society, there is an urgent need today to create a platform where the social scientists and scientists can meet. Unfortunately, in India, despite the tremendous development of science and society, of science and technology, we do not have such meeting places where scientists and social scientists can come together to discuss pressing issues of the day. I believe that this Congress can be such a forum. And therefore, I took the opportunity to be present here and make some of my very brief submissions. I believe the pursuit of science cannot be an end in itself. It has to be a means to realize an end. And the end is to create a better society, a better world to live in. And it is in that context of what I believe to be a crucial relationship between the pursuit of science and development of constructive social forces, I would like to raise certain issues for your consideration. Let me start with two quotes from two leading scientists of our time. The first quote is the following. I quote, "Science begins when speculation ends, unquote. The second is the quote, I quote, the whole of science is nothing more than a refinement of everyday thinking, unquote. And the question that I would like to raise is whether after 7 decades of independence and tremendous development of science and technology in our country, have we been able to avoid speculations? Or have we been able to get rid of superstitions? Perhaps not. In fact, very often I find that my friends from science or technology tend to be more superstitious than my friends from social sciences and humanities. Take, for example, the random examples that I give, the famous Ganesh episode, the episode of Ganesh. How many scientists were attracted to that event? I still find my established scientist friends using horoscope to settle the marriage of their sons and daughters. I still find my friends from distinguished friends from science using astrology to identify auspicious moments in his or her life to initiate something new. We thus need to ask ourselves, why is this a persistence between what I call the dialectics between the pursuit of science and reliance on speculation? The question is, why has not the pursuit of science caused what Einstein called the refinement of thinking, or what Jawaharlal Nehru called the development of scientific temper? I'm happy to find that a particular session in this conference is devoted to the understanding of the scientific temper and how we can increase scientific temper in our country. Now, what do I mean by science communication? By science communication, I imply a process which enables communication of the fruits of scientific knowledge, the fruits of technological development, to broader sections of the society. And only when we can have an effective science communication policy, we can develop the right type of scientific temper. Now, one way of ensuring the communication of scientific knowledge to society is surely by undertaking what I call popular science exercises and make science understandable for those like me without any background of science. I am here reminded of Einstein's The Meaning of Relativity, or Steven Weinberg's First 3 Minutes, or Watson's The Double Helix, which are perhaps some of the best examples of popular science texts that communicated to people like us, ignorant of science, some of the basic intricacies of scientific discoveries. Despite significant advance in the realm of science and technology, India's ranking in the UNDP Human Development Index roughly hovers around 132. And a national family health survey indicates the decline in the per capita calorie intake, while 1 in 3 malnourished children in the world are Indian, and 46% of our children below the age of 5 are underweight. At a time when we pride ourselves to be becoming one of the largest pharmaceutical, one of the largest pharmaceutical industries in the world, every year about 78,000 Indian women die in childbirth, and nearly 1 million women suffer from neonatal deaths. This is happening, I believe, because despite fundamental breakthroughs in science and technology in our country, there is something, a disjunction between the delivery system and what is happening in our laboratories and classrooms. Again, almost 120 million homes in India cannot afford to have proper toilets, leading to the deaths of 450,000 infants due to diarrhea every year. We need to ask ourselves why this is happening. Sometimes, as I feel, the relationship between science and society is also mediated by a moral question, and we do look up to the scientists to provide a way out to solve this moral question. This moral dichotomy, as I see it, results from a dialectics between patent protection and considerations of public health. Inventions lead to innovations, innovations lead to patents, and patents lead to the development of what we now call a patent regime. But very often, the patent law can violate the canon of morality, and we need to understand how can we solve this question of the violation of the public morality. Let me give you a specific instance. Suppose there is a scenario where company A in a developed country invests capital for a specified period of time to develop a life-saving drug which will naturally be sold at a high price to recover its investment. But there may be soon a company B in a developing country which comes to know of the new drug, goes around the patent, and sells a generic drug at a much lower cost than the company A. It is true that such generic drugs come as a boon for the subordinate sections of the society, although it might be violating some of the basic tenets of patent law. We look up to the scientific community for giving us a way out where the patent initially patented in a developed country can be brought to the benefit of the broader sections of a developing society. Again, let's take the case of nanotechnology, which is poised to bring in a new industrial revolution. Nanotechnology will not only revolutionize our technology, but nanomedicine is poised to work wonders. But at the same time, nanotechnology can also be used to develop sophisticated war equipments. The ethical challenge is how to ensure that the new knowledge system can be used for peaceful purposes. I'm reminded here of Bertrand Russell's famous warning in his famous book, The Impact of Science on Society, where he reminded us, science is a double-edged sword. It can be used for constructive purpose, it can be used for destructive purpose. And therefore, we look up to the scientific community to show how science can be used only for constructive purpose and not for destructive purpose. The other challenge for the scientific community in India, as I see it, how to maintain a balance between our rich biodiversity and the tremendous development of science and society. We need to have a proper direction from the scientific community in this context. Again, take for example the very issue of the genetically modified seeds. Why is it that the seeds which cannot be used in the developed countries of the West are being welcomed in India? Are you aware of the pros and cons of the genetically modified seeds? Or are we become victims of multinationals like Monsanto? We need a clear guidance from the members of our scientific community so that we can take our country to a process where nation-building strategy does not become a nation-destroying strategy. The fundamental question, therefore, I wish to raise for your kind consideration is how do we pursue science and technology in a country like India, which is on a takeoff point so that science can become a weapon for inducing inclusive growth in our society. May I remind you of how keenly aware our first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru was about this social concern of the scientific community when he noted as early as 1956 while addressing the Indian Science Congress, and I quote, "You, the scientists, cannot isolate yourself from the life of the world, from the joys and sorrows, from the possible dangers to the world, or the possible benefits that might come to the world from your activity. A problem that Indian scientists have to deal with is the development of the Indian people, the betterment of the Indian people, raising their standards, increasing their wealth, and removing inequality," unquote. Finally, let me end by stressing the role of the scientists in sustaining our cultural pluralism and social diversity. Indian culture does not represent one particular strand. Indian culture is assimilative. Indian culture is synthetic. And in order to ensure that science in India promotes the development of Indian society as a whole, the scientists, I believe, have also a direct role to play to sustain this pluralistic nature of Indian society. The famous scientist, Richard Feynman, a household name for students irrespective of the discipline, realized this dialectical relationship between science and society to which I hinted when he noted, and I end my submission with a quote from him, I quote, "I think we should teach them wonders, and that the purpose of knowledge is to appreciate wonders even more, and that the knowledge is just to put into correct framework the wonder that nature is," unquote. I believe that could be a starting point, that could be a guiding point as scientists in India strive together to make India a better place to live in. With these words, could I have the pleasure of inaugurating this conference and wish this conference every success. Thank you very much indeed.
We wholeheartedly thank Professor Shuranjan Das, the Vice Chancellor of the university in which this conference is taking place, the Jadavpur University, for inaugurating this conference. Since we are a bit ahead of time, we'll also start the next session ahead of time. In another 5 minutes, the first session of the conference on history and philosophy of science will start.